The massive alien dreadnought hung in space like a dark metal mountain. Its hull stretched for miles, covered in weapon ports and scanner arrays that gleamed with an evil light. Inside the command center, Admiral Krax studied the small human ship on his main screen with growing irritation. "Such a tiny vessel," Krax said to his second-in-command, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never lost a battle. "Are you certain it poses a threat?" Sub-Commander Vex checked his instruments again, his blue-scaled fingers dancing across the control panel. "Sir, our intelligence reports say human ships are dangerous. This one is called the UES Thunder Bay. It appears to be a frigate-class vessel." Krax laughed, a sound like grinding metal that echoed through the bridge. His species, the Karathi, had conquered 17 star systems in the past decade. No single ship had ever stood against their fleet before. Their technology was superior to every race they had encountered. Their weapons could crack planets. Their shields could deflect the output of small stars. One small human ship against our entire battle group? This will be over quickly. The Thunder Bay was indeed small compared to the alien vessel surrounding it. The human frigate measured only 800 feet in length, while the smallest Karathi cruiser was 3 times that size. Captain Ben Harris stood on his bridge, watching 12 enemy ships move into attack formation like predators circling wounded prey. His crew of 43 humans looked nervous, but determined. "Sir," said Lieutenant Kate Wilson from her position. At the scanner station, her voice steady despite the odds they faced. "They are charging weapons, all 12 ships. Energy readings are off the charts." Ben nodded calmly, his weathered face showing no fear. He had been in the Navy for 20 years, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. "Any word from the colony?" "Evacuation is 70% complete," replied Communications Officer Rick Foster, adjusting his headset. "They need 20 more minutes to get everyone off planet." Ben looked at the tactical display showing red dots surrounding his single blue dot. 20 minutes against 12 alien warships. His single frigate had good shields and decent weapons, but the math was simple and brutal. They were completely outnumbered and outgunned. "Well then," Ben said quietly, straightening his uniform, "we give them 20 minutes. On the Karathi flagship, Admiral Krax grew impatient. His 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern on his elongated skull, studied the human ship with predatory interest. "Have they responded to our surrender demand?" "No, sir," Vex replied, his voice carrying surprise. "They are moving to intercept our attack formation." Krax's 4 eyes widened in genuine shock. In his long military career, no single enemy ship had ever charged his fleet. Usually outmatched vessels tried to run or immediately surrendered. "They are attacking us?" The Thunder Bay accelerated toward the alien fleet, its engines burning bright blue against the black of space. The human ship looked like a minnow swimming toward a school of sharks. Weapon systems came online with a low humming sound that vibrated through the ship's hull. "Target their lead ship," Ben ordered, his voice carrying across the bridge. "Full power to forward shields." "Sir," said Weapons Officer Tony Clark, his hands hesitating over the firing controls. "Should I hold back some firepower for later?" Ben shook his head. "There might not be a later, Tony. Give them everything we have." The first exchange of fire lit up space like a deadly fireworks show. Human missiles streaked toward the alien ships, their white contrails cutting through the vacuum. Return fire blazed back in brilliant purples and reds that painted the Thunder Bay's hull in shifting colors. The human ship shook violently as enemy weapons struck its shields with tremendous force. "Shields down to 80%. Kate reported, watching her displays flicker as energy cascaded across their defensive systems. "But we scored direct hits on 2 of their ships." On the Karathi flagship, damage reports flooded in faster than Admiral Krax could process them. Sub-Commander Vex looked genuinely shocked as he read from his display screen. "Sir, the humans penetrated Cruiser 7's shields. Significant hull damage reported on decks 12 through 15. Cruiser 12 reports complete weapon system failures in their forward battery." Admiral Krax stared at the tactical screen in disbelief. The small blue dot representing the human ship continued to flash as it fired again and again. "How is this possible? They are 1 ship against 12 of our finest vessels." "Sir, requesting permission to run deep scans on the human vessel." "We Need to understand their capabilities before we lose any more ships. Granted, but keep firing. I want that ship destroyed before it damages any more of our fleet. The scanning beam from the Karathi flagship swept over the Thunder Bay like an invisible searchlight. What it revealed made the alien crew step back from their stations in confusion and growing alarm. Engineer Chief Zach operated the deep scanner with trembling claws. "Admiral," Zach called out, his voice tight with confusion. "These readings cannot be correct. I have run the scan 3 times. What do you mean?" "The human ship shows massive structural stress throughout its frame. Their hull is rated for pressures we would consider completely inadequate for deep space combat. Their weapon systems are primitive compared to ours, using chemical explosives and basic energy projection. Their shields use technology that is at least 50 years behind our current systems." Krax frowned, his 4 eyes narrowing as he tried to understand the contradiction. "Then why are they hurting our ships?" "I do not understand it, sir. By all our calculations and military doctrine, they should have been completely destroyed in the first exchange of fire. But the Thunder Bay kept fighting like a wounded animal that refused to die." Captain Ben Harris watched his ship take hit after hit, while continuing to return fire with everything they had. His bridge filled with acrid smoke from overloaded systems and sparking control panels. "Hull breach on Deck 4, reported Chief Engineer Sam Baker over the communication system, his voice strained. "I am sealing it off now, but we are losing. Atmosphere fast." "Casualties?" Ben asked, dreading the answer. 3 injured, no deaths yet. But sir, we cannot take much more of this punishment. The hull is starting to buckle in several places." Ben looked around at his crew. Each face showed fear, but also an iron determination that surprised even him. They all knew what was at stake. Below them on the planet, thousands of human families were loading onto evacuation ships, trusting their navy to buy them the time they needed to escape. How much longer for the evacuation? Rick checked his communications panel, sweat beading on his forehead. 15 minutes, sir. The transports are moving as fast as they can. 15 more minutes of this brutal punishment. Ben made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. "All power to weapons," he ordered without hesitation. "Take it from life support if you have to." Kate looked up from her station, in alarm. "Sir, that will leave us with minimal air and gravity. We could suffocate." Ben's jaw tightened with resolve. "The colonists need those 15 minutes more than we need comfortable air." The Thunder Bay's weapons suddenly blazed with new intensity that caught the Karathi fleet completely off guard. Torpedoes and energy beams struck the alien ships with devastating force that exceeded all their tactical projections. 2 Karathi cruisers lost main power as their shields collapsed under the unexpected barrage. A third began spinning out of control, its navigation systems completely fried. Admiral Krax watched his ships take serious damage from an enemy that should have been helpless by now. His tactical computers had predicted complete human defeat within the first 5 minutes of combat. Impossible. Run the scan again immediately. The new scan results were even more disturbing than the first. Chief Zach's voice shook as he reported the findings that made no sense according to everything they knew about space warfare. "Sir, the humans have diverted life support power to weapons systems. They are slowly suffocating themselves to fight us more effectively." "What kind of species does that?" Krax asked, genuine fear creeping into his voice for the first time in decades. "I do not know, sir, but their weapon efficiency just increased by 40%. At this rate, they might actually damage our flagship." The battle continued for another brutal 10 minutes that felt like hours. The Thunder Bay took terrible damage that should have destroyed any normal vessel. Hull plates vaporized under concentrated alien fire. Internal explosions rocked the ship from bow to stern. Emergency lighting flickered throughout the corridors as main power systems failed one by one. But somehow, impossibly, the human ship kept fighting with a determination that bordered on madness. "Sir," Kate said through an emergency oxygen mask, her voice muffled but still professional. "Major hull breach on decks 2 and 5. We are losing atmosphere at an alarming rate." Ben put on his own mask, the plastic feeling strange against his face. Around him, his crew worked at their stations while breathing emergency air from portable tanks. They moved slower now, their movements becoming sluggish from oxygen deprivation, but they did not stop working. Evacuation status? 5 more minutes, Rick reported, checking his communications one more time. The last transport is loading civilians now. 5 minutes. They had to hold their position for just 5 more minutes while their ship died around them. Tony, target their flagship, everything we have left. The Thunder Bay fired its remaining weapons at Admiral Krax's massive dreadnought. The concentrated barrage struck the alien vessel's shields with enough force to light up half the solar system. The massive Karathi flagship shuddered under the impact like a mountain hit by an earthquake. For the first time in the entire battle, the Karathi command ship took serious structural damage. On the alien bridge, alarms screamed as critical systems failed throughout the ship. Sparks flew from control panels as overloads cascaded through their power grid. Hull breach on the command deck, Vex reported in shock, watching damage reports scroll across his screen. They actually hurt us. A single dying frigate damaged our flagship. Krax stared at the small human ship on his view screen. It was clearly dying, atmosphere leaking from multiple holes in its hull like blood from wounds. Its weapons fired sporadically, now running on backup power. Its engines flickered like dying stars, barely keeping the vessel moving. Why do they not surrender? He asked quietly, voicing the question that haunted him. Chief Zack had been monitoring human communications throughout the battle. Sir, I have been listening to their internal transmissions. They are not fighting for victory or glory. Then why do they continue this hopeless battle? They are fighting for time, to save the civilians on the planet below. Every minute they delay us means more families escape to safety. Admiral Krax felt something he had never experienced before in his long military career. Fear, not of death or defeat, but of an enemy that would rather die than abandon their people. This was not normal military behavior. Most species surrendered when resistance became hopeless. Sir, Vex interrupted, monitoring the evacuation. The human evacuation ships have entered hyperspace. They escaped successfully. On the Thunder Bay, weak cheers went up from the surviving crew members who still had enough air to speak. They had done it. Every civilian had escaped safely while their ship bought time with its own destruction. Well, done everyone, Ben said over the communication system, his voice tired but proud. Mission accomplished. The ship drifted quietly in space, its engines finally going dark. Most systems had failed completely. The crew huddled together in the few sections that still had breathable air. They waited for the end that seemed certain now, but the end did not come in the form they expected. Instead, a message arrived from the Karathi flagship that surprised everyone. Human vessel, this is Admiral Krax. Prepare to be boarded. We are dispatching rescue teams to take survivors. Ben could not believe what he heard through his headset. They want to capture us? No, sir, Rick said, monitoring the alien communications with growing amazement. I think they want to rescue us. Admiral Krax made a decision that would echo through galactic history and change the course of interstellar relations forever. Something about the human crew's sacrifice had touched something deep in his alien mind that he did not fully understand. They had fought impossible odds not for glory or conquest, but to save people they cared about. As Karathi rescue teams prepared to board the dying human ship, Krax realized he had learned something both terrible and wonderful. Humans were not just another species to be conquered and absorbed into their empire. They were something far more dangerous than any weapon or technology. They were beings who would die for strangers, fight hopeless battles without hesitation, and never give up on the people they had sworn to protect. And that realization terrified him more than any fleet or superweapon ever could. Sub-Commander Vex, Krax said slowly, send a message to High Command. Tell them we need to reconsider our expansion plans in this sector. Sir? Tell them we have encountered something that changes everything we thought we knew about warfare. The rescue operation proceeded quickly. Karathi medical teams, trained in emergency procedures for dozens of species, worked efficiently to save the human survivors. They found Captain Ben Harris still on his bridge, refusing to leave until his crew was safe. Why did you not abandon ship? A Karathi medic asked through a translation device. Ben looked at the alien with tired but determined eyes. Captains go down with their ships. But more importantly, we do not abandon our people. The medic did not understand. But something in the human's voice made him shiver. Throughout the rescue, the Karathi teams discovered things that defied their understanding of military protocol. They found humans who had given their oxygen masks to wounded shipmates. Engineers who had stayed at their posts until the last possible moment to keep life support running. Medical staff who had continued treating patients even as the ship fell apart around them. This is not normal behavior. Chief Zach reported to Admiral Krax. Most species we have encountered prioritize individual survival over group welfare. But not humans, Krax said thoughtfully. No, sir. They seem to operate under completely different principles. As the last human survivor was brought aboard the Karathi flagship, Admiral Krax stood in his ready room, staring out at the wreckage of the Thunder Bay. The small ship had nearly destroyed his entire battle group through sheer determination and sacrifice. He realized that if humans could fight like this with one small ship, what would happen if his fleet encountered a full, human battle group? The thought made his four eyes close in something approaching terror. The implications were staggering. The Karathi Empire had built its power on the assumption that superior technology and numbers always won. But humans had just proven that assumption wrong. A species that fought harder when the odds got worse was something entirely new in galactic warfare. Captain Ben Harris found himself in a medical bay that looked nothing like any human hospital he had ever seen. The walls curved in impossible angles, covered with instruments that pulsed with soft blue light. Karathi medical technicians moved around him on 6 legs each, their movements precise and efficient. "Your injuries are not severe," said the lead medic through a translation device that made his voice sound mechanical. "You will recover fully within a few days." Ben tried to sit up, but restraints held him to the examination table. "What about my crew?" "All survivors are receiving treatment. Your species is remarkably resilient. Many beings would have died from the injuries your people sustained." Through a transparent wall, Ben could see other human crew members in similar medical bays. Kate Wilson was conscious and arguing with a medic about something. Rick Foster appeared to be sleeping peacefully. Tony Clark was sitting up and appeared to be sketching the alien medical equipment. "How many?" Ben asked quietly. 31 survivors from your crew of 43. You lost 12 people in the battle." Ben closed his eyes. 12 good sailors, who would never see home again. But 31 who would live because of their sacrifice. And thousands of civilians who escaped because they held the line. "Admiral Krax wishes to speak with you when you are recovered," the medic continued. "He has many questions about human military doctrine." "I bet he does." Admiral Krax paced his ready room like a caged predator. The battle reports lay scattered across his desk, each one telling the same impossible story. A single human frigate had damaged 4 of his cruisers and nearly destroyed his flagship. His tactical computers still could not explain how it had happened. "Sub-Commander Vex," he called over the intercom. "Yes, sir?" "Bring me everything we know about human military history. I want to understand what we are dealing with." The data files that arrived painted a disturbing picture. Humans had a history of fighting against impossible odds and somehow surviving. Their military records showed countless examples of small forces holding off much larger enemies through sheer determination. One report particularly caught Krax's attention. During something called World War II, a group of 300 human soldiers had held a position called Thermopylae against thousands of enemies. They fought to the last man rather than retreat. This happened in their ancient history, Krax muttered to himself. But they still fight this way. Another file described human naval traditions, something called going down with the ship, where captains were expected to die with their vessels rather than abandon them. The concept made no sense to Karathi military thinking. "Vex," Krax called again. "Sir? Schedule a meeting with the human captain as soon as he is medically cleared, and prepare a full tactical analysis of this engagement for High Command. Should I recommend continuing our expansion into human space?" Krax was quiet for a long moment. "Not until we understand them better." Dr. Sarah Kim was the Thunder Bay's chief medical officer and one of the survivors. She found herself in a strange position, working alongside Karathi medical staff to treat her own crew members. The aliens were surprisingly cooperative, sharing their advanced healing technology. "Your medical knowledge is impressive," said a Karathi doctor named Zix, "but your treatment philosophy is different from ours." Sarah looked up from treating Ensign Pete Collins, who had severe burns from an exploding console. "How so?" "We prioritize saving the most viable patients first. You treat the most severely injured first, even when their chances of survival are low." "We do not abandon our people," Sarah said simply. "Every life has value." Zix studied her with his large black eyes. "Even when treating them, uses resources that could save others?" "Especially then." The conversation was interrupted by Pete Collins, stirring on his medical bed. "Doc, are we still fighting?" Sarah checked his bandages. "No, Pete, the battle is over. We won." "Good. Did the civvies get away?" "Every single one." Pete smiled and closed his eyes. "Then it was worth it." Zix watched this exchange with growing confusion. The injured human showed no anger about his wounds, or fear about being captured. He only cared that the mission succeeded. "This is not normal behavior," Zix reported to his superiors later. "Most species show resentment when injured in failed military actions. But their mission did not fail," came the reply. "They accomplished their objective. By dying for it." "Yes, and they seem proud of that fact." Admiral Crax finally met with Captain Ben Harris 3 days after the battle. The human looked tired but alert, wearing a simple gray uniform provided by the Karathi. They sat across from each other in Crax's ready room. "You interest me, Captain Harris," Crax began. "Your ship was clearly outmatched. Why did you not retreat or surrender?" Ben considered the question. "Because we had a job to do, a job that required your death?" "If necessary, yes." Crax leaned forward. "Help me understand. In Karathi culture, preserving one's own life is the highest priority. Self-sacrifice is considered a mental illness. In human culture, some things are more important than individual survival, such as protecting those who cannot protect themselves, keeping your word, standing by your friends and family." Crax studied the human carefully. "You would die for strangers?" "Those colonists trusted us to protect them. That is not a trust we take lightly. Even though they could not reciprocate? Even though they will never know your names?" Ben shrugged. "That is not the point. The point is doing what is right." The conversation continued for hours. Crax asked about human military training, cultural values, and historical conflicts. What he learned disturbed him deeply. Humans routinely sacrifice themselves for abstract concepts like honor, duty, and loyalty. They had a documented history of fighting hopeless battles rather than surrendering. They seemed to get more determined when the odds got worse. "This is not rational behavior," Crax told Vex later. "No, sir. But it is effective. Our tactical analysis shows that if we had faced a full human battle group instead of a single ship, we might have lost the entire fleet." "How is that possible?" "Because we plan for rational enemies who retreat when defeated. Humans do not retreat. They fight until they are completely destroyed. And while they are dying, they inflict maximum damage on their attackers." Crax felt a chill run through his body. "Send a priority message to High Command. Tell them we need to avoid human space until further notice." "Sir?" "Tell them we have discovered a species that fights like they have nothing to lose. Because, apparently, they do not." The message to Karathi High Command included detailed tactical analyses and recordings from the battle. When the military leadership reviewed the materials, they reached the same conclusion as Admiral Crax. "Recommend immediate suspension of expansion in this sector," read the official response. "Redirect fleet assets to less defended areas." Admiral Crax was relieved. Facing humans in battle again was not something he wanted to contemplate. Meanwhile, the human survivors were quietly released at a neutral space station. No official records were made of the encounter. The Karathi Empire did not want other species to learn about human fighting capabilities. As Captain Ben Harris prepared to leave the Karathi flagship, Admiral Crax offered him one final meeting. Captain, I must ask you something. Go ahead. If you had known the outcome of the battle beforehand, would you have made the same choice? Ben thought about his 12 dead crew members. Good people who would never see their families again. Then he thought about the thousands of civilians who escaped safely. Yes, he said without hesitation. Every time. Krax watched the human leave with something approaching respect. He had fought many enemies in his career, but none had impressed him like these strange beings who valued duty over survival. After the humans departed, Krax called another meeting with his senior staff. I want new protocols implemented immediately, he announced. If we encounter human ships again, we are to avoid engagement unless absolutely necessary. Sir, is this not against our expansion mandate? Our expansion mandate assumes we can win battles through superior force. Against humans, superior force may not be enough. The final confrontation came 18 months after the Thunder Bay's last stand. The Free Worlds Alliance had grown to include 23 species spanning 47 star systems. Admiral Ben Harris commanded a combined fleet of human and alien vessels united by tactics learned from human military doctrine. Emperor Zarthan of the Karathi Empire faced a choice that would determine the fate of his civilization. His advisors surrounded him in the throne room, each offering different strategies for dealing with the spreading rebellion. We still have superior numbers, argued General Korth. A massive military response could crush the rebellion before it spreads further. At what cost? Asked Admiral Krax, who had been recalled to the capital. Every battle will be like fighting humans. They will make us pay for every victory. Then what do you suggest? Krax looked directly at the Emperor. Negotiation. We need to find a peaceful solution before this war destroys us all. The Emperor studied the tactical displays showing rebel territory. Red zones marked areas under Alliance control, and they were growing every day. Show me the casualty projections for a full military campaign. Chief Scientist Yex activated the holographic projectors. Conservative estimates suggest we would lose 60% of our fleet even if we won. Worst-case scenarios show complete military collapse. Because they fight like humans? Exactly. They no longer retreat when defeated. They fight until destroyed, and while dying, they inflict maximum damage on our forces. Emperor Zarthan realized that the Thunder Bay had not just damaged his ships. It had fundamentally changed how warfare worked in the galaxy. The old rules no longer applied. Admiral Ben Harris stood on the bridge of the UES Resilience as the combined Alliance fleet prepared for what might be the final battle of the war. Around him, officers from a dozen different species worked together with an efficiency that would have been impossible before the human example. Admiral, reported Commander Lisa Park, we are receiving a transmission from the Karathi flagship. They are requesting a parley. Ben was surprised. They want to negotiate? It appears so, sir. Emperor Zarthan himself is requesting a personal meeting. Ben thought about Captain Jake Robinson and the crew of the Thunder Bay. They had fought to save civilians, not to start a galactic war, but perhaps their sacrifice could end one. Agree to the meeting, but maintain battle readiness. The negotiation took place aboard a neutral space station in the DMZ between Alliance and Karathi territory. Emperor Zarthan arrived with a small escort, showing unprecedented humility for a leader who had never personally attended peace talks before. Admiral Harris, the Emperor said through his translator, I must speak with you directly. I am listening. Your Majesty, your species has changed everything. Before humans entered galactic politics, wars were fought according to logical principles. Superior forces won. Inferior forces surrendered. This maintained stability. Ben studied the alien leader. And now? Now species fight beyond logic. They accept destruction rather than defeat. This makes conquest too expensive to sustain. Maybe. That is not a bad thing. Emperor Zarthan's four eyes focused on Ben with something approaching respect. Perhaps not. But it means the Karathi Empire as it existed can no longer survive. The negotiations continued for days. The final agreement reshaped the political structure of the galaxy. The Karathi Empire would grant independence to all member worlds that chose to leave. In exchange, The Free Worlds Alliance would guarantee the security of remaining Karathi territory. This is not a defeat, Emperor Zarthan explained to his people. This is an evolution. We are choosing cooperation over conquest. Many Karathi worlds chose to remain in the Empire, but on a voluntary basis. Others joined the Free Worlds Alliance. The galaxy became a patchwork of independent systems and voluntary federations. Admiral Krax found himself in an unexpected position. As the Karathi officer most familiar with human tactics, he was appointed as military liaison to the new alliance. His first assignment was to help former Karathi colonies establish their own defense forces. It is strange, he confided to Admiral Harris during a joint training exercise. 6 months ago I was planning to conquer these worlds. Now I am helping them defend themselves. How does it feel? Krax thought about the question. Better than I expected. There is honor in protecting people rather than enslaving them. Dr. Sarah Kim established the first interspecies medical college, teaching alien doctors the human approach to medical ethics. The curriculum emphasized individual worth over resource optimization. Every patient deserves our best effort, she told her first class of alien medical students. Not because it is efficient, but because it is right. A vegan student raised a tentacled appendage. But what if treating one expensive patient means we cannot treat 5 cheaper ones? Then we find a way to treat all 6. Human medicine is not about choosing who lives and who dies. It is about refusing to accept that choice. The concept spread quickly through the galactic medical community. Alien hospitals began adopting human-style triage and treatment protocols. Mortality rates dropped across dozens of species. Lieutenant Commander Kate Wilson was promoted to captain and given command of the UES Thunder Bay II, a new ship named in honor of the vessel that started it all. Her crew included humans and aliens, working together as equals. Captain, said her Centauri navigation officer, we are approaching the memorial site. Kate looked out at the debris field where the original Thunder Bay had made its last stand. A permanent monument had been erected there, honoring the 12 crew members who died and the principles they represented. All stop, she ordered. 2 minutes of silence. The mixed crew stood quietly at their stations, humans and aliens united, in remembering the sacrifice that had changed their galaxy. When the silence ended, they continued their mission, protecting civilian transports in the outer colonies. The memorial inscription read simply, "To those who fought impossible odds for others, their sacrifice lit a spark that became a flame, a freedom across the stars." Captain Ben Harris, now promoted to Fleet Admiral, often visited the memorial when his duties allowed. He would stand before the monument and think about the chain of events that had started with one small ship, refusing to abandon its duty. "Do you think they knew?" asked his aide, Commander Lisa Park, during one such visit. Knew what? That their sacrifice would change the entire galaxy. Ben thought about Captain Jake Robinson and his crew. I think they knew they were doing the right thing. That was enough for them. The galaxy had indeed changed. The old system of conquest and submission had given way to cooperation and mutual defense. Aggressive species found themselves isolated and outnumbered by coalitions of free worlds. Piracy had virtually disappeared as former victims learned to fight back with human-inspired tactics. Trade flourished under the protection of multi-species defense agreements. Most importantly, the concept of sacrifice for others had spread throughout galactic civilization. Species that had once considered only their own survival now protected their neighbors. The human idea that some things were worth dying for had become a galactic principle. 5 years after the Thunder Bay incident, Admiral Ben Harris received an unexpected honor. The Free Worlds Alliance named him Supreme Commander of Allied Forces, making him the first human to hold such a position. "I am not sure I deserve this," he told the Alliance Council. Ambassador Quinn of the Centauri Collective responded for the group. "Admiral, your species taught us that courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite fear when others need protection. You taught us that duty is not about following orders. It is about doing what is right regardless of personal cost. Most importantly, you taught us that no sacrifice is too great when freedom is at stake." Ben accepted the position, knowing that the responsibility came with great weight. The galaxy now looked to humanity for moral leadership as well as military guidance. As he stood before the assembled representatives of 43 species, Ben thought about the crew of the Thunder Bay, 12 ordinary sailors who had become legends without ever knowing it. Their story was told throughout the galaxy now. Children of dozens of species learned about the humans, who chose duty over survival. Military academies across known space studied their tactics and philosophy, but the most important lesson was simpler than tactics or philosophy. Sometimes doing the right thing was more important than surviving. Sometimes the willingness to sacrifice everything was exactly what saved everything. The Thunder Bay had been destroyed, but its legacy lived on in every free world across the galaxy. Captain Jake Robinson and his crew had fought one impossible battle and won a war they never knew they were fighting. And in the vast darkness of space, their memory continued to inspire beings who faced their own impossible odds. The human spirit of stubborn determination had become a galactic inheritance, passed down to species who had never heard of Earth but understood the value of never giving up. The galaxy was a better place because 12 humans had chosen duty over survival. And that choice continued to echo across the stars, reminding everyone that sometimes the smallest light could illuminate the darkest void. News of the encounter spread through the Karathi Empire faster than Admiral Krax had expected. Within a week, every military commander in their territory had received copies of the battle analysis. The reaction was swift and unanimous. Fleet. Admiral Thex called an emergency meeting of the Supreme Military Council. Representatives from 12 conquered species attended, along with the highest-ranking Karathi officers. Explain to me how a single primitive warship nearly destroyed an entire battle group, Thex demanded, his 4 eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the battle. Admiral Krax stood before the assembled leaders, feeling more nervous than he had in decades. The humans fought with tactics we have never encountered before. They prioritized mission success over personal survival. That is impossible, said General Korth, a scarred veteran of dozens of campaigns. No species fights to total extinction, unless they are driven insane. The humans were not insane. They were following their military doctrine. They call it duty. The room erupted in confused discussions. The concept of duty as humans understood it did not translate well into most alien languages. The closest equivalent in Karathi was obligation, but that implied external pressure. Humans seemed to impose this obligation on themselves. Show us the tactical recordings, Admiral Thex ordered. The holographic display replayed the battle in 3 dimensions. The assembled officers watched the Thunder Bay's suicidal charge against impossible odds. They saw the human ship continue fighting even as it died piece by piece. Note the point where they diverted life support power to weapons, Krax pointed out. They chose to suffocate themselves rather than reduce their firepower. Murmurs of disbelief filled the chamber. Such behavior was beyond the understanding of most species. What are their fleet capabilities? Asked Admiral Vorth of the Third Fleet. Unknown, but if they have more ships like this one, any invasion of human space would be catastrophically expensive. Fleet Admiral Thex studied the tactical data for several minutes. Recommendation? Avoid human space entirely. Mark it as a forbidden zone for military operations. Agreed. Admiral Krax, prepare a detailed report for the Emperor. Include recommendations for long-term strategy regarding this species. Meanwhile, at the neutral space station where the human survivors had been released, Captain Ben Harris waited for transport back to human space. The station was a haven for traders and refugees from various species, and news traveled fast through its corridors. Is it true? Asked a Vegan trader named Glix. Did you really fight 12 Karathi ships with 1 frigate? Ben sipped his coffee, a luxury that cost more than most people made in a month this far from Earth. We did what we had to do. But why? You could have escaped, saved your own lives. There were civilians depending on us. Glix's translator struggled with the concept. You mean they paid you extra for the risk? No, they were in danger. That was enough. Word of the encounter was spreading through the galactic community. Most species found the human behavior incomprehensible, but it was having an unexpected effect. Pirates and raiders were beginning to avoid human colonies. "I heard humans will fight until they are dead," said one pirate captain to another in a station bar. "And while they are dying, they try to take you with them. That is bad for business. Very bad. Better to raid someone else." Dr. Sarah Kim had returned to human space ahead of the other survivors to brief military intelligence. She sat in a sterile conference room on Luna Base, facing a panel of admirals and intelligence officers. "Tell us about their medical capabilities," requested Admiral Janet Cruz. "Advanced, far beyond ours in some areas. But they were genuinely puzzled by our treatment priorities." "How so?" "They could not understand why we would use resources on severely injured patients when we could save more lives by treating minor injuries first." Admiral Cruz frowned. "Did you explain our medical ethics to them?" I tried, but they seemed to think our approach was inefficient. "What was their reaction to our casualties?" Sarah thought about the Karathi medical staff she had worked with. "Confused. They could not understand why injured crew members showed no resentment about their wounds. They expected anger or demands for compensation. And when they learned our people were proud of the mission's success? Complete bewilderment. They asked me several times if we had been drugged or psychologically conditioned." The intelligence briefing continued for hours. Every detail of the encounter was analyzed and recorded. The conclusion was clear. Humanity had made a powerful impression on at least one alien empire. Back on the Karathi homeworld, Emperor Zarthan reviewed Admiral Krax's report with growing concern. The implications went beyond military strategy. If humans could fight this way, what other species might be inspired to similar resistance? "Summon the Science Council," he ordered his aide. "I want a complete psychological analysis of human behavior patterns." The Science Council consisted of the Empire's best xenopsychologists and cultural analysts. They spent weeks studying every piece of information available about human society. "Most disturbing," reported Chief Scientist Yex at the final briefing. "Humans appear to have evolved a social structure that values group survival over individual survival." Explain. "Most intelligent species develop self-preservation as their primary instinct. Humans have somehow programmed themselves to override this instinct for abstract concepts." Emperor Zarthan leaned forward on his throne. "Such as duty, honor, loyalty, justice. Concepts that exist only in their minds but which they treat as more important than their own lives. This makes them dangerous? Extremely. They will accept casualties that would cause other species to surrender immediately, and they seem to fight more effectively when facing overwhelming odds." The Emperor considered this information. The Karathi Empire had grown powerful by conquering species that fought rationally. Humans apparently did not fight rationally. Recommendation: quarantine human space. Establish a buffer zone and do not allow any military contact. Study them from a distance until we understand them better. Meanwhile, the story of the Thunder Bay was spreading through human space as well. Captain Ben Harris found himself called to testify before a congressional committee on Luna. "Captain Harris," said Senator Robert Clay, "your actions have had significant diplomatic consequences. Several alien species have reached out to establish formal relations with humanity." "That was not our intention, sir. We were just doing our job." "Nonetheless, your sacrifice has changed how aliens view our species. Some see us as potential allies. Others see us as a threat to be avoided." Ben thought about Admiral Krax and their conversations. "With respect, sir, maybe that is not a bad thing." "How so?" "If aggressive species think twice before attacking human colonies, then fewer people die. That seems like a positive outcome." The hearing continued for days, but the conclusion was inevitable. The Thunder Bay incident had established humanity as a force to be respected in galactic politics. Lieutenant Kate Wilson returned to active duty aboard a new ship, the UES Defiant. Her experience with the Karathi had earned her a promotion to lieutenant commander and assignment as the ship's tactical officer. "What was it like?" asked Ensign Amy Rogers, fresh from the academy. "Terrifying," Kate admitted, "but also strangely satisfying. We saved every civilian on that planet." Was it worth losing the ship and 12 crew members? Kate looked out at the stars through the bridge viewports. Ask me again when you have to make the same choice. The impact of the encounter continued, to ripple through both human and alien space. Human colonies strengthened their defenses, knowing they could count on the Navy to protect them. Alien raiders looked for easier targets. Most importantly, humanity had established a reputation that would serve them well in the dangerous galaxy they were exploring. They were not the strongest species or the most advanced, but they were the most stubborn, and sometimes that was exactly what the situation required. 6 months after the Thunder Bay incident, the effects were still rippling across the galaxy. Captain Ben Harris had been promoted to admiral and given command of the Fifth Fleet, tasked with protecting the outer colonies. He stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the UES Resilience, reading intelligence reports that would have seemed impossible a year ago. "Admiral," said his aide, Commander Lisa Park, "we have confirmation from 3 separate sources. The Karathi Empire has established a 50-light-year exclusion zone around all human territory." Ben looked up from his tablet. "They are avoiding us completely." "More than that, sir. They have been actively discouraging other aggressive species from entering human space. Intelligence believes they are worried about setting a precedent." "What kind of precedent?" "That resistance is possible. If other species see humans successfully fighting the Karathi, they might start resisting too." The irony was not lost on Ben. By fighting one hopeless battle, humanity had accidentally started a quiet revolution across the galaxy. Species that had been conquered decades ago were beginning to whisper about rebellion. On the Karathi homeworld, Emperor Zarthan faced the crisis he had feared. Reports arrived daily of unrest in conquered territories. Species that had been docile for generations were suddenly questioning Karathi authority. "The humans have infected them with their madness," reported Intelligence Chief Vork. "Conquered populations are beginning to believe they can fight back." "Show me the reports." The holographic display filled with data from across the Empire. On Vega 7, the local population had refused to increase mining quotas. On Rigel 4, protesters had gathered outside government buildings. On Alpha Centauri B, there had been actual armed resistance. "None of this is directly connected to the human incident," Vork continued, "but the timing suggests correlation." Emperor Zarthan studied the data with growing alarm. "What are they saying? If humans can fight 12 Karathi ships with one vessel, maybe we are not as invincible as we claim." The Emperor realized that the Thunder Bay had done more than damage a few ships. It had damaged the myth of Karathi invincibility that kept their empire stable. Recommendations: complete information blackout. Suppress all reports of the human encounter. Increase security on all conquered worlds. And if that fails, then we may face the first galactic-wide rebellion in recorded history. Admiral Ben Harris received an unexpected visitor at his headquarters on Titan Station. A slender alien with gray skin and large black eyes requested a private meeting. The being identified himself as Ambassador Quinn of the Centauri Collective. "Admiral Harris, I represent 17 species that were conquered by the Karathi Empire over the past 50 years. Ben gestured for the alien to sit. "What can I do for you, Ambassador?" "We want to learn how to fight like humans." The request caught Ben off guard. "I am not sure I understand." "Your battle against the Karathi has inspired hope across the galaxy. Species that accepted defeat are beginning to believe resistance is possible." Ben thought about the implications. "Ambassador, we lost that battle. Our ship was destroyed. But you accomplished your mission. You saved those you were protecting, and you showed the galaxy that the Karathi can be hurt." Quinn leaned forward, his black eyes reflecting the starlight streaming through the office windows. "My people have been slaves for 30 years. We accepted our fate because resistance seemed hopeless. But if humans can damage a Karathi fleet with one ship, perhaps we can damage them with 17 species working together." "What are you asking of me?" "Military advisors. Training. Help us learn to fight with human tactics." Ben was quiet for a long moment. Getting involved in an alien rebellion could have serious consequences for humanity. But he remembered the faces, of the civilians they had saved and the crew members who had died to save them. I will have to discuss this with my superiors. Of course, but Admiral, please consider this. Your sacrifice saved 30,000 humans. Imagine what it could do for 30 million aliens. The meeting ended with promises to consider the request, but Ben knew the decision had already been made in his heart. Humans did not abandon people who needed help. Dr. Sarah Kim had been assigned to study alien medical practices, hoping to advance human medicine. What she discovered changed her perspective on the galactic community entirely. Most species have very different approaches to medical ethics, she reported to the Medical Council. The Karathi, for example, practiced triage based on social status, rather than medical need, meaning higher-ranking individuals receive priority treatment regardless of the severity of their injuries. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the chief medical officer, frowned. That is barbaric. It gets worse. The Vegan Empire practices what they call resource optimization. They allow individuals with expensive medical conditions to die rather than treat them. And other species accept this? They see it as logical. Most alien cultures prioritize collective efficiency over individual welfare. Sarah brought up another file. But here is the interesting part. Since news of our medical practices spread, several species have begun questioning their own systems. How so? Vegan doctors are refusing orders to withhold treatment from expensive patients. Karathi medics are treating injuries based on severity rather than rank. They are calling it the human approach to medicine. The medical revolution was happening alongside the military one. Human values were spreading through the galaxy in ways nobody had expected. Lieutenant Commander Kate Wilson received a special assignment that brought her back into contact with alien forces. She was selected to serve as a liaison officer aboard an alien research vessel studying human military tactics. The ship was crewed by beings from 6 different species, all united by their desire to understand how humans fought so effectively while being technically inferior. "Commander Wilson," said the ship's captain, an insectoid being named Click, "please explain human unit cohesion to us." Kate thought about how to answer. "We fight for each other." Elaborate. When things get dangerous, humans do not think about themselves first. We think about protecting the person next to us. Click's translator struggled with the concept. This makes you fight more effectively? Much more effectively. A soldier who is only fighting for himself might retreat when wounded. A soldier fighting for his friends will keep going until he physically cannot continue. The alien researchers took detailed notes. They were particularly interested in human training methods that built emotional bonds between soldiers. Most species train individuals and then group them into units, observed Dr. Zix, the Karathi medical officer Kate remembered from the Thunder Bay rescue. Humans train groups and then assign individual roles. That is correct, Kate agreed. We build teams first, then teach the teams to fight. Why? Because in combat you are not fighting for your country or your cause. You are fighting for the person next to you who is counting on you to keep them alive. The research mission lasted 3 months and produced a comprehensive study of human military psychology. The findings were distributed to resistance groups across the galaxy. Admiral Krax found himself in an impossible position. As the officer who had first encountered human forces, he was considered the Empire's expert on human capabilities. But every recommendation he made seemed to make the situation worse. "Sir," reported Subcommander Vex, "we have confirmed reports of resistance activity in 14 systems. All are using tactics based on the human model." Explain. "They are accepting heavy casualties to accomplish limited objectives. Previously, they would retreat when losses exceeded 10%. Now they fight until completely destroyed." Krax felt a chill. The human approach to warfare was spreading like a virus through the conquered populations, and their effectiveness dramatically increased. A Rigelian resistance cell destroyed an entire supply depot yesterday. They lost 80% of their people, but they considered it a victory because they completed their mission. This is exactly what I feared would happen. Vex looked confused. "Sir?" "When humans fight, they change the rules of warfare. They make sacrifice acceptable. Once other species learn that lesson, our numerical advantages become meaningless. The next report was even worse. 3 conquered systems had declared independence and were coordinating their defenses using human-inspired tactics. They are calling themselves the Free Worlds Alliance, Vex reported, and they are requesting military assistance from humanity. Krax realized that the Thunder Bay had not just won a single battle. It had started a war that could destroy the Karathi Empire. Send a message to Emperor Zarthan, he ordered. Tell him we need to begin peace negotiations with the humans immediately. Sir? If we cannot stop this rebellion, our only hope is to make peace with the species that started it. The message reached the Emperor within hours, but it was already too late. The rebellion had spread beyond the point where military force could contain it. 17 species had joined the Free Worlds Alliance, and more were declaring independence every day. Human advisors were quietly providing training and support to the resistance movements, teaching them everything from small unit tactics to field medicine. The galaxy was learning that humans had more to offer than just military stubbornness. Captain Ben Harris, now Admiral Harris, received authorization to provide